All right, welcome to another episode of Grad Chat from PhD Balance, where we talk about topics of grad school beyond academic research and that may be more difficult to talk about in our day to day. I'm your host, Phelan, and I'm a PhD candidate in biochemistry at UCLA. If you like what you see here, check out the PhD Balance YouTube channel for more grad chats, and don't forget to subscribe for notifications about when we go live. So I am so excited to talk to our guest today, Liesl Krause, who is the new president of PhD Balance. Liesl is a third-year PhD candidate at Purdue University Polytechnic. She is currently studying graduate student mental health, especially as it relates to their advisor and online support system. Previously, she obtained her bachelor's in electrical engineering from Villanova University and her master's in biomedical engineering from Purdue. Liesl is excited to be the next president of PhD Balance and hopes to expand the resources the organization can provide to grad students internationally. So I've had the pleasure of interacting with Liesl while working with PhD Balance, and I can really attest to her strong leadership skills and ability to inspire. So welcome, Liesl. How are you doing today? How is your dog doing today as well?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. This is Archer, and he is also doing great. He's just being a little love bug right now, but we're going to put you down in a little bit, okay, buddy? Okay.
Hi, Archer.
Say
And hi,
goodbye.
Liesl. We are so excited to chat about your new role as president of PhD Balance. And I think the first question we want to start out is why has PhD Balance restructured to have a president?
That's a really great question. So there's a few different reasons that we decided to take on this new leadership structure. First of all, our founder, Susanna, has been doing a really awesome job over the past 3 years, but she recently graduated with her doctorate. She's looking for a new job, and honestly, running PhD Balance is just a lot of work. So she was looking to kind of take a different role in PhD Balance. She's still going to be super involved, just not in the same way. And then we also really wanted to make sure that PhD Balance was always being led by a graduate student. So I will be the president for a year and a half. And then every June, you'll see a new president coming online for PhD Balance. And this is to make sure that we're always having fresh ideas, we're reducing the amount of burnout in our leadership. And it's just also making sure that whoever is in charge knows currently what graduate students are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So Susanna will be the head of the company that PhD Balance is founded under. She'll be taking over a lot of the financial responsibilities for PhD Balance and making sure that logistically everything is running smoothly, but I'll be doing more of the day-to-day stuff that you saw her doing previously.
Awesome. And this is it's been super exciting for me to be a part of PhD Balance and to see these team of people just really champion graduate student mental health. And if anyone out there is interested in joining us, it really is an incredible group of people where we are, what I've seen is everyone is attuned to supporting each other, right? And even in this restructuring that we're doing, I think overall there is this mission to support each other while logistically also keeping in mind what our mission is and keeping attuned to the graduate student experience as we keep going forward. So Liesl, it is really exciting to talk to you today. And another question we have here is, what is your research topic? You mentioned you study graduate student mental health. You want to talk a little bit more about what that means? What kind of research do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I originally went into the program I'm in, which is technically called Technology, Leadership, and Innovation, but I just refer to it as STEM education, with the idea that I wanted to study graduate student mental health. I think we kind of all colloquially know that graduate student mental health is not great across the board, especially here in the United States. And I didn't really see much happening in the way of meaningful change to fix that. So I talked with my advisor and we started to look into some of the different ways that graduate student mental health was maybe suffering or could be improved. And one really big factor that we found was the relationship that students have with their advisors, which some of you who are listening or watching might know just from your own experiences with your advisors, that sometimes there's not a lot of empathy there or not a lot of understanding for your experiences as a student, especially when you think about the fact that they maybe were students just a decade before you. So originally my plan for my dissertation was to look into how the empathetic relationship between advisors and advisees affected the mental health and productivity outputs of graduate students. I was planning to do that through a method called skin conductivity. So essentially, I would have graduate students and their advisors have meetings at least once a month with each other. They'd be hooked up to these skin conductivity sensors. And whenever there was a change in skin conductivity from one participant, you would expect to see a similar match and change from the other participant. And skin conductivity is just something where the amount of sweat at a very microscopic level changes on the surface of your skin. Whenever you're feeling different types of emotions, they actually use this in polygraph machines to see if you might be lying or if you're having some sort of stress response during questioning. So this was going to be kind of a new, innovative, like biomedical technique to look at empathy. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I cannot do that research because it requires people to be in close proximity of each other. And also the levels of empathy that you would feel and the amount of connectedness that you would feel actually change with having a mask on, because we get a lot of our cues from each other through our face and through in-person rather than video interaction. With all that being said, I'm now still studying how graduate student mental health is affected by advisors, but I'm doing that through a survey tool, as well as looking into online support structures like those on Twitter to see how graduate students and other people in the academic space are talking about their relationships with their advisors and how they feel mentally online in places where they might not be as restricted as they would be talking to an ombudsman or a dean or their professor themselves.
Wow, that research sounds really interesting. And you mentioned you had your previous degrees are in electrical engineering and biomedical engineering. And so I think people are curious, how do your previous degrees relate to your current research?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So obviously, with my previous research plan of using skin conductivity, a lot of that really draws on my electrical engineering and biomedical engineering background. I primarily was looking at signal processing in my undergraduate degree, and then that inspired me to go into biomedical engineering to look at image processing of biologics. Looking at signals from the human body like skin conductivity, or looking at different imaging modalities and seeing how those could be used to look at more humanistic factors like empathy is really important to me. Now, a big part of why I'm doing this online study is because I think sometimes there's the stereotype of the engineer or the scientist as being unable to communicate well with other people outside their field. And I think some of that barrier can be broken down by social media. So I'm still using the same kind of concepts that I would use from my engineering background, but I'm also using a lot of the relationships that I've experienced in my engineering coursework and research to inform how I'm going to move forward with my study.
That is so cool. I think it's really cool to have this angle of a really research focused angle on graduate student mental health, because so much of this topic is hard to talk about. You know, there's stigma when you're trying to be vulnerable, talking about your own experiences. It becomes something that is not easy to talk about day to day, which is one of the reasons why we have these grad chats to kind of break that barrier down. And I'm curious, like, as your role as a researcher, how has those conversations, are they different as a researcher versus as someone maybe experiencing going through that mental health experience? if that makes sense. How does being a researcher influence how you talk about mental health?
Definitely. So when I say that I'm researching graduate student mental health, typically I get a lot of people who are more inclined to open up to me about their experiences. And so I think in some ways, doing this research has made me kind of a person that people want to come to and tell me, like, oh, like, yeah, I'm really struggling in graduate school because I'm dealing with all of these XYZ problems, and what you're studying like really connects with me. And I think that that's really great. And I'm more than happy to like be a support person and somebody that will listen to what you're facing and going through. But I think also being a researcher in this space kind of gives me some of the tools and language to talk about mental health in that way. Making sure that we're using the proper terminology when we're talking about mental health moving forward. As an example, a lot of people, when they talk about suicide, might say that somebody committed suicide. A term that we're now using that started kind of in the research space is they died by suicide, because it takes away the victimization of, it takes away the victimization of that terminology. And so that kind of language has really changed within me, and I have more words to better explain how somebody might be feeling so that I can reflect back what they're telling me. And I think that makes me like a better listener. And it makes me feel like I can walk away from those kinds of interactions in a little bit of a better space than I would have been able to previously, just as somebody who experiences a mental illness rather than somebody who experiences that, but also researches it and has those tools at their disposal.
Awesome. I think that leads really well into our next question, which says, what are your qualifications for being president of PhD Balance?
Yeah, definitely a valid point. I have been working with PhD Balance for about 2 years now. I started out as a social media coordinator, and really tried to help drive engagement specifically on Twitter. But also, this community is about making, a safe place for us to talk about mental health stigma, and everything encompassing that, especially as it relates to academia. And I feel that through my research, I've definitely gained a lot of those resources and tools to be able to bring to the community and make sure that whatever we're putting forward, we're doing that responsibly, and we're doing that in a way that is good for the community as a whole. That can be something like in our new constitution and bylaws that we've put forward for PhD Balance, we now have a list of standardized terms that we will use for certain groups and certain types of illnesses and stigmas, so that we're using, the standard language across all of our resources to make sure that we're being as respectful as possible, with everything being backed by the current research, while also making sure to, be mindful of people's experiences. Everyone is still welcome to, in their stories, self-identify as in any way that they would like, but that language and terminology that you'll see coming from us will always be very standardized, and we can always provide the resources and citations for how we came to that standardized language. And again, that's just one example of kind of the tools and resources that we want to put forward for all of you as part of this community.
Yeah, I think it is really cool to have someone like yourself who has been in the research sphere of mental health, because like you mentioned, so much of mental health advocacy, or the work that PhD Balance has been doing, it's not just about getting the resources out there for people to support themselves, but also some learning knowledge and how to, you mentioned how to say, use certain language that is either supported by the research or just makes this space a bit more comfortable and accessible, inclusive, etc. Those are all such important aspects of mental health awareness and advocacy that I think having someone with a mental health research background like you do makes it really cool. And I think it's going to be really cool for the next steps of PhD Balance to see what you'll come up with for the organization. And I guess with that, what can we expect from PhD Balance for the next year?
That's another great question. So right now we're working on a couple of different things that we're hoping to roll out. You'll continue to see Stronger Together putting out modules every month. We're also hoping to add a little bit more organization to our Discord. So if you are a part of our Discord server and feel a little bit overwhelmed by the channels, be on the lookout, because we're hoping to add a little bit of organization to that, as well as some more engagement through that channel. We're also looking into potentially adding in some merch options for you all, which would help to support some of the costs of us operating PhD Balance, and also be able to let you guys kind of wear your colors of PhD Balance out in the real world rather than it just remaining online. We also are looking at adding some speaking opportunities. So if your organization or institution is looking for somebody to come speak about mental health in academia, at whatever functions you might have, please keep in mind that we would be able to do that, and we'll have that in a more structured way with more information coming in the next couple of months.
Awesome. And I just want to say, from working with PhD Balance in the time I have, that since, I don't know, I think since these grad chats launched, it feels like it's been forever, but I think it was in during 2020 that we launched. And in that time, I've worked with PhD Balance, and they have just so many incredible resources from all kinds of platforms, across all kinds of different platforms, all kinds of different media, that this is something I wish I had in my earlier years of grad school.
Same. Yeah, and we're hoping to expand some of those resources as well. If you've been to our website, you may have seen that we have a resource tab, and expect to see more things popping up on there. We're not quite sure what those will be yet in like concrete ways, but we are hoping to kind of expand that page.
Yeah, and it is absolutely awesome. I mean, follow PhD Balance on Twitter, Instagram, check out their Discord, and like Liesl said, check out their website. I'm sure if the info is not in the YouTube info right now, then we will add it. But PhD Balance is really an amazing online community for you to get resources on how you can best approach your mental health, manage your mental health, etc. And it is so exciting to have Liesl at the leadership role that she will take on. So, Liesl, is there anything in addition that you want to share with our audience about your role or who you are, or anything that you would like to share in regards to being president of PhD Balance?
I'm just really honored that, I've been trusted with this role. I'm excited for my team to help us all move forward. And really, this is a team effort. I couldn't do what I'm doing without all of you who are volunteers with us. As you know from my many messages in the Discord being like, oh my gosh, we need to do these things. If you all have any questions for me about my leadership role or who I am, please do not hesitate to come over onto my Twitter or my Instagram. I'm Sauerkraut74 in the dealio. And, I am kind of an open book. So, ask me whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess a little bit about me just as a person is beyond the engineering degrees and stuff. I like to read. I'm in a book club called Life's Library with John Green and Hank Green, and that's really awesome. I love that. I also have my amazing dog, Archer, who has run out of the room, as I mentioned him. But he's gotten me super into dog training over the past several months. And I really love working with dogs and dog training. So I think another benefit of following me and me being in charge of PhD Balance is more pet content. So if that's something that you're into, I am here to provide it.
I'm very into pet content, and I
Yes.
am definitely looking up that Instagram after we log off.
Oh yeah,
So,
Archer does have his own Instagram. It's archer.the.dog. Archer the dog. Um, and see all of his weirdness there.
awesome. I am literally so excited. When I joined PhD Balance, I'll say it was a year ago, or less than a year ago. I did not imagine to have met so many incredible people like Liesl, who studies graduate student mental health and is a researcher in graduate student mental health, and connecting with such different people and their backgrounds, expertise, etc. Honestly, it's been such an amazing experience, and it's been fantastic talking to you today about what's next for PhD Balance. And Archer's back.
Yeah, Archer came back. Archer, good boy. Say hello to all of your adoring fans.
Hi, Archer. You're going to get so many followers after this.
Don't you want to be famous? He says yes. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me come on and talk and introduce myself to the community.
Yeah, and it is going to be absolutely a great, great new year for PhD Balance.
I hope so, yeah.
So this has been awesome. So if you're just tuning in, if this is your first grad chat from PhD Balance, we go live every Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we bring on a different guest to talk about different topics of mental health, diversity, equity, inclusion, professional development, and so much more. Topics that are harder to talk about in person. If you did like what you see, subscribe to get notifications about when we go live. And I guess we will see you all next time. All right. Bye.
Bye. Well,